Welcome to Chowder and Grits, the podcast for Virginia Tech and ACC sports. I'm Justin Cochiola alongside Tim Hirth. It is Thursday, March 17th. March Madness is upon us, and we are going to break down our brackets. But the first thing we're going to talk about is probably one of the most important victories in Virginia Tech sports history. Definitely probably the biggest in basketball. I can't imagine anything bigger. But the Hokies went on an incredible run, have won 13 of the last 15, knock off Clemson in buzzer beater fashion, take down Notre Dame, beat North Carolina and Duke back-to-back nights to bring home the ACC championship. It was an incredible run. But before all that, Tim, what's going on? It's been a while.
Well, I'm just getting fired up for the greatest couple of days in sports. I usually take off, so I'm taking half days Thursday and Friday. But man, I'm jacked. I absolutely love the NCAA tournament, and it doesn't matter whether the Hokies are playing in it or not. It's still a huge event for me. So I'm looking really forward to having just wall-to-wall games and finally get to turn on True TV twice a year. So I get to turn on the True TV and whatever other random channels we got games on and eat it up, man.
Yeah, I had the annual panic attack. Oh my God, I don't have True TV last night when I was trying to find the play-in game.
Yeah.
And of course I did. It was just buried at the bottom of my menu, which is the one thing I don't like about the YouTube TV is there's no channel numbers. So you've just got to look at the little small icons and then hope you find it. True TV was not coming up as an option for me because I don't think I've turned it on in a year. Which got me to thinking, does True TV even exist without March Madness?
Good question. I think my wife may watch it. She watches a lot of those murder type shows where somebody's getting killed every episode and it's some kind of investigation. And I can't stand those shows, but I feel like those are coming on True TV.
Yeah, that brings just stress and anxiety to my life.
Oh my gosh, wears me out. That's right. I understand the world is bad. I don't need the constant reminder. But she eats that stuff up, not me.
What's the comedy show on there that people love to hate? The
Impractical Jokers or something.
Jokers, yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't know if we need to go on a tangent here or not, but I can't stand that show.
So you're one of those.
I can't stand those guys, man. Oh man, it's the fake laughing to me. Like I get that you have to sell that everything you're doing is the most funny thing you've ever seen in your life, but
right,
just something about it is triggering to me because some of the stuff they do can be funny on occasion, but it's those guys that just wear me out.
Yeah, no, I get it. I haven't watched it in a few years. I could do without it. I don't care. I'm not gonna like it. It's one of those shows where you're like, man, it's a dumb show, and then you just happen to leave it on. You look up and 3 hours has passed and you're like, what am I doing?
Yeah. See, for me, that's Bar Rescue. John Taffer, absolute legend.
Yep.
Watch a lot. That guy is passionate about bars. And man, I can't get enough of him going through the dirty kitchens and golly. John Taffer, if you're listening, I assume you are. I'd love to get a beer with you at some point in time.
Yeah, maybe come on the pod. We'll have you.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll do a bit. But yeah, Tim, let's talk about the Hokies and then we'll get into the bracket and the madness. But like I just said, I think this is probably the greatest run in Virginia Tech sports. I was trying to go through my head, like, what are the biggest wins any sport for Virginia Tech? I have to think the 95 Sugar Bowl was up there.
Yeah.
That
100%.
was kind of like we've arrived from a football standpoint. Otherwise, football wise, do we have a win? Like winning the ACC for the first year was big. But yeah, otherwise, like I don't know. Nothing like really stood out to me. Obviously, like the Ohio State game, that's a regular season game, right? You didn't have a conference championship on the line. And the ACC championships in football, like they're great. Don't get me wrong, but we're a football school traditionally.
Of course.
So the fact that the basketball team how they started the season, 2-7 in conference play, so many close losses, just couldn't seem to figure things out, Tim. And that's what was so frustrating, because we came into the season with high expectations and it just wasn't working out. And like we said, like, we're going to know a lot about this team by the time December's over. And yeah, I think what we knew was they're just not what we thought they were. And we didn't really see this team turn a corner until the end of January, after the half-court buzzer beater from Miami to send you to 2-7, which was just a deflating loss. You know, you had previously lost to like Boston College. They were just losing to teams that they shouldn't have been losing to. You know, they open up the ACC with the
NC State, one of the worst teams
State.
in NC State history. Yeah.
So,
Crazy.
I mean, it's just it was just incredible the way they started and the way that they made the run through the tournament. I mean, you've got the Maddox magic with the second round game against Clemson, and Clemson's one of those teams who had really started playing better towards the end of the season.
Right.
They were one of Virginia Tech's 2 losses in that 15 game span. And it was almost the end of their, non-regular season. It would have been NIT for the Hokies had Maddox not hit that shot. But, they'd gotten PJ Hall back, who they had been without for a while, and they just looked like a different team. They were tough to beat. And they played a good game. They made a great comeback, and it's creeping into your head. Well, here it is again. Here's Virginia Tech. Can't close out, can't close games. They had no business going to overtime in that game. But they were able to pull it out. A little bit iffy against Notre Dame, but was able to kind of reel it back in. And then you look at the North Carolina and Duke games. I mean, great first halves, very competitive, but then pretty much put their foot on the gas in each of those games. And I mean, they were no doubters in the second half. I mean, Duke was looming, but never really got within a point where you were like, oh, here they go. They're going to lose the lead. And it was just incredible to see this team really find its groove. It's definitely gelling at the right time. They're fun to watch. I mean, they still turn the ball over more than I'd like. They're still iffy at the foul line. I think what was it, the Clemson game where Couture missed 3 in a row, and I was I guess they're going to lose. So I don't know. I mean, just an incredible run, a run that I didn't think they had in them, if I'm being honest. But I'll gladly, eat my words on that one.
Yeah, no, I don't think anybody could have seen it coming. I mean, especially when you look at the depths of an 0-4 start in the ACC down to 2-7, losing to teams like you mentioned, Boston College and NC State, Storm Murphy looking overwhelmed. And I think that's really a big piece of what has gone on throughout the season, is Storm becoming more and more comfortable at the point guard position, not to overstate or understate in this case how important Padula's rise was as well. Sean Padula playing extremely well in that backup point guard role. There's a pretty seamless in and out with those two. And it just culminated and it clicked finally. I mean, I'm not an advanced metrics college basketball guy. I usually make fun of advanced metrics college basketball guys, but I remember sitting, and I think we were probably 2-6, 2-7, right around that point, and all the advanced metrics are pointing to us being one of the most unluckiest teams in college basketball. Now, don't ask me how they arrive at this conclusion. It's a bunch of stats, whether that's looking at offensive efficiency or expected field goals. I don't know if they have those measurements or not. These could all be made up, but that was the key takeaway, was basically Virginia Tech was one of the most unlucky teams in the country. And I think you could attribute a lot of luck, if you will, to kind of a regression to the mean, kind of some shots going in that maybe should have been going in for us to begin with. The team collectively
it felt like
better
early in the year too, like we were getting everybody's best shot. Like we'd play a team and like they just couldn't miss from 3, or they'd shoot 65% or something like that, to where we're not on our best game, and then we lose a close game that you thought you should have won. It felt like that happened a lot.
Right. And I mean, the luck kind of went our way. Look at Couture. I mean, Couture hadn't had a game like that since, down at Florida State. And he's trying to put it kindly to Hunter. He looked pretty bad. I think UNC had 3 points. Leaky Black basically shut him out. Leaky Black, shout out to that name. It's a great name. But yeah, Hunter had struggled for the good part of 3 weeks, and out of nowhere against Duke literally brings home an ACC title for us. Keve Aluma is fantastic. I mean, he reminds me of like a smaller Tim Duncan, just the way that his explosiveness, there's no real explosiveness there, but there's almost a certainty about what's going to happen when he starts backing you down in the post. I mean, that baby hook with his right or left hand is beautiful and almost unguardable. When you had that level of play from Mutz and Aluma, kind of your backbone, you're knocking down 3-pointers again. I mean, that's a recipe for success, but that's the team we thought we were going to see from the jump. Right. I remember talking to you preseason. Look, that's a strength we knew we had. We're one of the best 3-point shooters. I think we're top 10 in 3-point field goals in the NCAAs.
Number 4 in the country.
Number 4. Okay. Number 4 in the country. That's what we thought we were going to be. And we've really figured out a way to balance ourselves between those 3-pointers to hit them at a high clip and be efficient with them without forgetting, hey, Mutz and Aluma in the post can do damage as well. And it seems like when we start to clank a couple 3-pointers in and the bricks start to show up a little bit, there's that tendency to start really trying to force it. And a lot of teams who aren't balanced will continue to shoot those threes. But having a guy like Justin Mutz or Keve Aluma that you can dump the ball down to in the post and just let him go to work, man, that's a nice pressure relief valve. And we've really leaned into it. And, I just can't believe we're here, man. I really cannot believe it.
No, yeah. I think what was great about the tournament is Storm Murphy really came on. It was the best Storm Murphy we've seen all year.
Right? Oh my God, yes.
I think if you look at the Clemson game, he got hot at the end of the first half. He had 12 points. He didn't shoot the ball much in the second half. He had a couple of big shots late. You obviously got the clutch performance from Darius Maddox. I think Darius Maddox went for 20 the following game against Notre Dame, which was a career high. Yep. And you had obviously the Hunter Couture performance against Duke, but then you just had consistency all the way around from Aluma. He was always a guy you could count on. Mutz was not so great offensively, but he was still able to score points. He was still able to get to the line. But what he can do as a passer, when I say from a shooting standpoint, I mean, he's just such a great facilitator, especially somebody for his size and the position he plays. It's not what you would expect from the two bigs. And I know Virginia Tech's bigs aren't, like Purdue bigs or anything. But
right. I mean, Justin Mutz is small forward size. We understand that. Mutz plays more of a power forward in our offense. If you want to get down to it, he's probably the 4. But you're right. His vision, especially when – and Keve Aluma can get this to some degree where you get blinders when you're in the post and the ball starts to stick a little bit. And a lot of big guys, especially ones that are scorers, can fall into that trap where they'll miss the guys out on the perimeter that they could kick it out to, and they'll force up a shot. So you got that pitfall you run into with those bigs sometimes. But Justin Mutz, I mean, he can look like he's going to post you up 1 minute and then sees a cutter flashing down the lane, whips a pass one-handed. And, having that ability as someone who plays in that way, incredible. And I mean, he and Keve Aluma play off each other so well in that way. Interchanges. They're mismatched demons, those two. I mean, because yes, you're going to probably have a height advantage on, if you're a 5, you're going to have a height advantage on Aluma. If you're a 4 in a Power 5 conference, probably going to have the height advantage on Mutz. But imagine being a 4 trying to guard Mutz. I mean, with his lateral quickness and his explosiveness. I mean, that's painful.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when they played Duke earlier in the year, which they gave Duke a pretty good run for their money. But
they did.
Malik Williams just looks like a tower out there compared to what you've got in Aluma. And I mean, when Aluma's going one-on-one with him, there was a couple of pretty easy blocks that Williams got off, but he just kept going at him and kept going at him, eventually got him into foul trouble. He completely outplayed him. And Malik Williams is probably a top 10 pick in the NBA.
Oh yeah.
Paolo Blanchero is going to be a top 10 pick, top 3, top 5 pick in the NBA.
God, what a handful that guy is.
And I mean, Justin Mutz basically had his way with them for the majority of the game. Like, obviously he got his shots, he got his looks. Like, he's a big guy.
And that's where we've seen us struggle, is with not necessarily height is a problem. We struggle with height. What we really struggle with is size. And I mean that from a strength perspective.
Yeah, Paolo he's girthy.
He's girthy, and he's one of those guys that's going to put his head down and drive to the rim regardless.
Which he did multiple times, where I was like, is that Mateo Durant or is that Paolo Blanchard? I don't know.
That's right.
Playing football?
That's right. Well, he did carry it in stiff arm.
For you Duke basketball fans out there, that's the Duke running back in football. I know you're probably not football fans if you're Duke basketball fans.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's the truth. But, I will say, thank goodness Ben Caro didn't have a 3-point jumper, because that would have been just a hassle to have to deal with that. But luckily, he ate it a couple of times. We were able to sag off on him on the perimeter, which allowed us to not get burnt off the dribble too bad with him. Again, the problem is stopping that guy with the head of steam he's got. Man, and when you're as good of a finisher through contact like he is, that's a problem.
Yeah.
You notice that with Bacot too. And I will say, we all know Mike Young's a fantastic coach. And even at 2-7, there's a little bit of revisionist history going on, where I see a lot of tweets saying Virginia Tech fans were calling for his head or were unhappy with and I don't recall too much of that. Because
there was definitely some of that on Twitter.
Yeah. But they act like it was the overwhelming majority, and I would say that was far from the case. We never doubted Mike Young's ability to coach. I didn't personally, and I would hope the vast majority of Hokie Nation didn't. I mean, what we get to see from an offensive perspective, yes, when the shots aren't falling, it looks painful. But the style of offense he runs is very pleasing on the eye. The ball movement, the ability to find open shots is fantastic. But what he was doing against Bacot with the double teaming and traps that he would get when he was down near the sidelines, just a few steps outside of the paint, he'd bring a guard crashing down, whether it be Keve or Justin that were in front of him. That was genius, because I didn't see a lot of that in the first two matchups with UNC, and Armando Bacot absolutely had his way. He's going to get his points regardless against a team like us. It's a bad matchup, but we were able to get some turnovers. We were able to make him uncomfortable. And I just thought absolute coaching masterclass from Mike Young in that Duke and UNC game. You can't say enough good things about it. And the boy from Radford ends up taking home, an ACC title from the school he went, as a kid watching basketball games at. It's storybook, man.
Yeah, and 6-0 in conference tournament, or in conference championship games, 5-0 at Wofford, 1-0 now at Virginia Tech. So incredible run. We'll see if the Hokies can maintain it. I mean, they go in hot. Like we said, they're 113 of the last 15. Since February 1st, they have the second highest winning percentage in college basketball, behind only Arizona, who's number one, and it's by like 0.1 percentage points. So wow. They're up there. And then following close behind them are Tennessee and Villanova. So other teams that are in that Elite Eight, Final Four conversation, that also either won or, I think all four of those teams actually won their conference tournament. So, I wanted to bring this up. There was a video going around of Buzz Williams, and it kind of reminded me of our era of Virginia Tech basketball when we were in school, the Seth Greenberg era, and kind of what was going on from 2006 to 2010. And, when we were freshmen, we made the NCAA tournament. It was the first time in a long time. We got the first round win, I believe, against Illinois. Second round loss to Southern Illinois, which was, I
think that's right, the Salukis, I believe.
Yeah, the Salukis. Mm-hmm. And then after that, we didn't get back. I think the 2007-2008 season, we went 21-14. And that's where we got the Seth Greenberg certifiably insane quote. And it felt like after that point, no matter what Seth Greenberg said, or no matter how his team performed, they weren't going to get in. And that was never more evident than in the 2009-10 season, our senior year, where Virginia Tech goes 25-9. I think they finished fourth in the ACC, and they got left at home, which was an absolute
I remember.
Joke.
I remember
And
Dickie V being very upset about that one.
yeah, but you had to think like, is this because they're holding a grudge against Seth Greenberg? And they'd never admit it, but we don't know. But if you didn't see, there's a clip going around from Buzz Williams where he basically, pulls out his Aaron Rodgers COVID research 500 paper, thesis. For those that listen to Pat McAfee, watch Aaron Rodgers on every Tuesday, you know what I'm talking about. But he had pages of research on basically the background of people that had been on the committee, what their career path was, what they were interested in, and basically what business they had assessing college basketball. And, to Buzz's somewhat defense, I'm not going to fully defend him because I think Buzz is about Buzz. And I think that little rant was more of trying to save face with the A&M donor base, since he has yet to punch a ticket. I'd like to also remind everybody that Virginia Tech has punched 5 straight NCAA tickets. Not to brag, but Buzz has yet to do that at Texas A&M, the school he left Virginia Tech to go to. So, I think there's probably a little added pressure there. At the end of the day, did I think Texas A&M belonged in the tournament? Yeah. You go, what did they have? 23 wins. They get to the SEC championship game. They run through teams like Auburn and Arkansas and whoever else they beat. And, they played in one of the better conferences this year. There was obviously a point in the season where they lost 8 in a row, but they turned it around. They got hot at the end. They made the run. The thing that really irritates me about college basketball right now is they've got this kind of like baseball complex to where they're so focused on these analytics, and this team grades out well here and they do this. And it's all really just bullshit in the end, because
it is.
If you look at the analytics for Virginia Tech, they're a top 20, top 30 team in almost every single metric you would look at. But then the committee ranked them the 46th best team in the field and handed them an 11 seed, which would have indicated that Virginia Tech, had they not beaten Duke.
Yeah, we were out.
Another thing that bothers me with the committee is they say the Sundays and the Saturday championships games, they don't matter. What do you mean they don't matter?
Ridiculous.
They do matter, because it mattered for Virginia Tech because they won the tournament. And if they hadn't, then they wouldn't have gotten in. Now, if they had lost, you're telling me beating Clemson, Notre Dame, and North Carolina 3 straight games, and having at that point finished 12 of your last 15, they still wouldn't have gotten in. That is ludicrous. And that's essentially kind of what happened to Texas A&M.
Yeah.
Then you got teams like Wyoming getting in and other teams. And I understand like a team like Richmond wins their conference and they take away a bubble spot. That happens. And that's the problem with being on a bubble. What I didn't like about Buzz's comments is there was absolutely zero accountability in there. It had nothing to do with their struggles throughout the season. Because I'm sorry, you lose 8 in a row, you struggled at one point. It's tough to make the tournament when you do that. Had they gone 1-7, 2-8, 2-6 in that time frame, who knows? Maybe they get in. I'm not saying they should have or not, but just interesting. And it's also at a time where we just expanded the field to 68 a couple of years ago. So it's like, tomato, tomato. But my issue with it is, if you're a Power 5 team, if you are 20 wins or more, if you're over 500 in conference play and you make it to your conference championship game, you should be in the tournament over a team like a Wyoming that gets in, or a San Francisco that gets in. And respect to those programs, but they don't play in the SEC. They don't play in the ACC or the Big Ten. So, I mean, those teams are much more battle tested. So if you haven't watched it, it's not really worth the watch. I thought it was pretty boring, honestly, but just kind of Buzz Williams running off the mouth there, but worth talking about. And it kind of reminded me of like all the seeding controversy. At the end of the day, we're an 11 seed. If we were a 6 seed, we would have the same exact path that we do right now.
Yeah.
So it really just doesn't matter. You just got to win your games. And that's what this time of year is all about.
True. It doesn't matter in that sense. I mean, it does in the inherited advantages that you get for being a higher seed. Obviously, you're going to play a weaker opponent. The thing I have issue with, and I agree with a lot of what Buzz said.
Typically, I think we're a stronger opponent than Texas, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think Virginia Tech was massively underseeded. Now you could say I'm biased, and you'd probably have a good point there. But Buzz Williams, a lot of what he said is right. And what frustrates me about the tournament selection committee is that each year I feel like we're given a new talking point of what matters. And it feels like the goalposts shift every year. And, one year it's like, oh, well, it's strength of schedule this year is what we're really looking at. That's the one. And, back when we were kids, it was RPI. RPI is so important. I don't even think they look at RPI anymore. I mean, because the net ranking
BPI now.
Then they created the net ranking, right? I mean, that was supposed to be the thing, right? That was going to be the new ranking that was really good and not bad like RPI. I don't even know if they use net ranking. I mean, what was Virginia Tech's net ranking? We were probably in the 30s. Maybe we cracked 30.
They were 20.
Yeah.
20.
Okay, so you have the net ranking, and that mattered one year. And then in another year, it was quarter one wins, Q1 wins, right? If you beat one or two top teams, and another team beat 3 or 4, and that other team was near a 500 record, and you won 23 games, guess what? You were probably on the outside looking in, even though you won 5 more games in the regular season. And that's the part that I can't stand about this whole thing. It's just the lack of transparency. I mean, it would help if we could all kind of sit in a circle as a group and say, okay, here's what's going to be important. Better yet, make it more scientific. Try to get a weighting system in there to take the human element out of this. Like you mentioned it earlier, that's what the BCS was. And I told you in the text message, the BCS with the playoff format would be how I would love college football to do it. Take the human element out of there. Give me what the computers say the 4 best teams are. Let that formula be known so there's no shenanigans. Put them in the college football playoff. Take the human element completely out, because what does the human element actually add? It adds implicit bias. It adds subconscious bias. And humans really have a good way of looking out for other humans. And it adds an element there that may not be, always above board. And I'm not suggesting it's some shady backroom dealing, but at the same time, if this was all on a computer and it was properly weighted, conversations like this would be much easier. And one of the things I'll point to when I say the human element, you think Duke deserved a 2 seed?
No,
I don't.
But you'll have guys like Joe Lunardi defend it to tooth and nail because of the metrics and the numbers that we rolled out. It's like, no, that's what drives me most crazy about it, because when Virginia Tech took the court against Notre Dame in the ACC tournament, Notre Dame came in there as a quad 1 opponent. Mm-hmm. And after Virginia Tech beat them, they were no longer considered a quad 1 opponent.
That's right.
Well, that doesn't work for me.
No, it shouldn't.
Because if you enter the game as a quad 1 and I beat you, should be a quad 1 win. And agreed. I don't care if you lose 10 games in a row after that. When I beat you, you were a quad 1. You know why I don't care? If you lost 10 games in a row after that, maybe you lost your best player.
Well, that's it. Maybe you lost a key player to injury. Yeah.
So there is no consideration of like realistic human variables that go into these metrics, because the Clemson PJ Hall example is a great one. He just wasn't around for majority of the season. And then he finally comes back and he starts playing and he's healthier. He gets past some of these injuries and Clemson looks like a different basketball team.
That's right.
So, you can put up the blind resume all day. Well, this team is 1-5 against the quad 1, but you keep taking quad 1s away.
That's right.
So, I mean, you're telling me you come in as a quad 1, I beat you, I get penalized for that. Mm-hmm. That makes no sense. I'm sorry. So these quad 1s, these quad 2s, these quad 3s, these quad 4s, I don't care. Okay, it's so stupid. There's all these dumb metrics now, and people get so hung up on them. There was some like offensive adjusted efficiency metric that somebody cited for Virginia Tech when they were on the bubble, and I was like, what are we talking about? We
got to stop going down this rabbit hole, man.
Well, their adjusted offensive Z per possession is last in the ACC.
Who cares? No one. Well, you shouldn't care. Okay, now there are metrics which I like. like strength of schedule. I think that does matter. Q1 wins irritate me so bad for that exact reason you said, because one, after defeating a team, anything can happen, right? Something could happen with the coaching staff. Something could happen with a key player. Something could happen. Doesn't matter. If they were a Q1 team when you played them, that should be a Q1 win. And I don't know how that works with teams that get better throughout the season. Are they allowed to jump to the Q1? I don't know how this is working. All I'm saying is maybe it's fluid up until the point you played them. And we just allow, hey, if you beat a team when they're Q1, it's a Q1 win. And if a team starts playing better later in the season and you face them, they have a chance to be a Q1 win if the metrics support it. But we've got to add transparency to all this stuff, because if you're a human committee and it's changing every year, it seems far too malleable to me. If you're sitting there in the committee and you've got a bunch of teams laid out, maybe there's a couple of teams you want to get in that have something in common, and maybe that something in common is the number of Q1 wins versus some other teams which may have higher rankings but not the same amount of Q1 wins. Well, as a committee, it's super easy to say, especially since if there's one person in that committee that's very influencing, hey, you know what? Q1 wins, they tell you everything you need to know about a basketball program. So this year, when we're selecting, we're going Q1 wins. Everybody wins, right? Yep. But then the point I'm trying to make too with Coach K didn't deserve a 2 seed. Tennessee deserved that 2 seed by far, and it wasn't even questionable.
Well, the SEC championship game didn't matter to him.
Of course. So, throw that out, and Duke still wouldn't have deserved it. Pointless. Right? Tennessee would have still had a strong. But here's the thing. They're basically doing Coach K a favor by giving him that 2 seed. It's literally like a consolation prize, okay? And I don't want any parting gifts or consolation prizes given by a committee that's supposed to be unbiased and get this seeding right. And if I'm a Tennessee fan, does a 2 and 3 matter to me? Probably. Do I really care as a Virginia Tech fan, especially given my history with Tennessee fans? No, I don't. But I do want it fixed in the future. Right? I'll be honest with you. I don't care, but I do want it corrected in the future in case, maybe Virginia Tech finds itself in another Seth Greenberg, Buzz Williams type situation where we're on the outside looking in and, we have to hear the same BS excuse as to why we were left out when there is no consistency year to year on how they decide these things.
Yeah, no, there's not. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm having major second computer issues right now. So I'm trying to get that situated as we're about to talk about our bracket.
It's my Little Mermaid cup for those watching YouTube. I live in a house with 3 females. I'm the only male, so a lot of my drinking vessels are appropriately themed. Little Mermaid, though, it's great movie.
We both have that same issue. So, so let's talk about the tournament, Tim. So obviously the Hokies go in red hot. So that made me want to do a little thinking on the 11 seeds historically, because I was thinking and then I looked it up. I recall George Mason was an 11 seed when they reached the Final Four. VCU was an 11 seed when they reached the Final Four. We had Loyola Chicago in 2018, obviously the Sister Jean era. And then, can you hear me? You can hear me. Okay. Give me 1 second. See, this is
this would be a great time if we were sponsored by somebody. Then I could just throw in a sponsorship here. Yes, I'm just tap dancing.
Okay, good.
I don't know who would sponsor
computer
us.
Technical issues. Probably not Dell computers. Anywho, so we had 2018 Sister Jean, Loyola Chicago, and then last year, actually, we had UCLA as the 11 seed. They were actually a play-in team, if you recall, and made it all the way to the Final Four.
I do recall.
So there's been some success with the 11 seed. And also, I think 1986 was, what was it, LSU? I think I had it written down. Yeah, LSU was an 11 seed that made it. They've never won a game in the Final Four. And the highest seed to ever win a national championship was Villanova in 1985. It's an 8 seed And then if you do recall 2016, Syracuse, a team that I think had 19 wins and in
Bubble
my opinion
team.
had no business being in the tournament, but got in as a 10 seed, made it to the Final Four. If I recall correctly, I don't have the games in front of me. They had a nice path open up for them because they got some upsets along the way and they were playing higher seeded teams, and that triangle system is difficult, or that zone defense they play is difficult to prepare for.
2-3, it's terrible
in short notice. So that's just a little background there, Tim. But for you, what really stands out for the tournament this year when you take a look at the bracket and the teams and everything that's gone on around college basketball recently?
Obviously you're looking at Gonzaga when you look at the bracket. I think they're probably the overwhelming favorite to win the whole thing, if I had to guess. I think by and large, which sounds kind of awkward after that ranting on the NCAA tournament committee, I think they did okay this year. I don't think they blew anything too dramatically. I do think Texas A&M deserved to be in, just looking at the resume. And, I have my issues with some of the seeding stuff, but I think they did a good job of getting some mid-majors in there. It's cool to see guys that schools that haven't been in the tournament in a long time. I mean, you consider a school like San Francisco, and I'm probably going to say something really stupid here. Did Bill Russell go to San Francisco? I don't know why that sticks out in my head. I'm going to Google that. But anyway, a team that used to frequent the NCAA tournament more frequently, hasn't been since probably 1980, maybe. Yeah. They're back in the tournament. Been a long time since we've seen the Dons. They're
get in that Mickey Mouse Gonzaga conference where it's usually just Gonzaga and St. Mary's.
Yep. And Pepperdine. Don't forget Pepperdine used to be good. I think they were really good back in the day, like Final Four type good. But that conference is very, very Mickey Mouse, as you put it. But I like the seedings. I think there's a couple of lower seeds, and I mean lower in that 4 to 5 to 6 range, that have real national title chances here. Right. So we'll go through a couple of those, I think, here in a minute. I don't know if you wanted to reveal like bracket picks or how you wanted to go about this.
Yeah, let's I'm getting close to having my bracket back up. Let's go through region by region
on my computer. Yeah, let me do that on my computer here. I had it on my phone, but this is a good idea.
Yeah. So I'll kick it off. So, we mentioned Gonzaga. So we'll start in the West. That's probably, I'm kind of glad Virginia Tech's not in that region up here. I mean, there's a lot of interesting matchups. I think it's pretty cut and dry though. I'm pretty chalky in this region. I've got Gonzaga facing Arkansas in the Sweet 16. I don't have any like major 12 or 13 upsets in this one. I've got Texas Tech actually beating Duke. I like Texas Tech. I think Texas Tech is a team that plays really good defense.
Yep. I
think they're playing motivated because Chris Beard left them at the altar for their, prettier sibling.
That's
and
right.
They're like holding a grudge to that, which, it feels like it's fueled them. There's something about Gonzaga this year where, I thought if Gonzaga was going to win a national championship, it was going to be last year. And they didn't. What were they, like 30-1 or something, 33-1, and their one loss was in the national championship game to Baylor.
Mm-hmm.
I think if Gonzaga, you play against them, you look at them, they're not challenged for the vast majority of the year. I mean, they do play a good number of top 25 opponents. A couple of those games were against St. Mary's, and they haven't really played a high level of competition really since November, December timeframe, just because of the conference that they play in. So it's really tough to assess. I mean, I think if you look at a guy like Chet Holmgren, who it's weird watching him play a basketball game. It just visually, just not a comfortable feeling.
Very true.
I'm just always concerned something's going to happen. But I like their team. I don't think Holmgren's had the year that like people kind of expected him to have. I mean, he's had a nice year, but he hasn't had this like just believable freshman campaign. And I don't think he's cemented himself as the number one pick of the NBA draft. Maybe he has, I don't know. But I like Texas Tech coming out of that region, actually. So I've gone back and forth on it multiple times. I had Gonzaga winning it all. And I've switched it. I may switch it again. I don't know. But right now I've got Texas Tech coming out of that West region.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's between Texas Tech and Gonzaga for me. I really, really, really like Texas Tech. I've watched it. We get a fair bit of Gonzaga before conference play starts, obviously, because there's big matchups there, typically with those preseason tournaments. And obviously they need to get as many good teams in as they can before they hit conference play. Unless they want to fill up, wins against San Diego and San Francisco and all those other opponents they play out there. But I don't know. I'm torn. I have Gonzaga right now. I'm almost straight chalk there for the most part. Memphis to me is a team with a lot of raw talent, and they seem a little poorly coached to me.
Just poorly coached. They're coached like an AAU team.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of talent. So usually with those teams, right, if there are games where they can put it all together and be very fluky with that kind of talent. And it just can, that's one I had a little trepidation with on Gonzaga, was that 9-1 game in the round of 32 just tripped me up a little bit, because you see Memphis play and you see a lot of talent.
Did Memphis win their conference tournament?
I think they lost to Houston.
Did Houston win it? Okay.
I think so.
I wasn't sure.
They were in the final, I think.
Yeah.
But I think Houston won. Don't quote me on that. So, that's kind of, I was hung up on that a little bit. I like New Mexico State a lot. I like New Mexico State over UConn. Arkansas, they're not going to get past Arkansas in the next round. And I'll tell you, this is intriguing because Arkansas is a really good team too, out of the SEC. Gonzaga's got to clear a couple hurdles. And you talk about the challenge with Gonzaga.
Arkansas-Gonzaga is going to be, if that game happens, it's going to be an interesting game. Arkansas is a fun team to watch. It's just, I watched them play A&M. I was just like, what's missing here? But sometimes it's good for these teams that know that they're going to get in the tournament to lose, to get that extra rest. I mean, you've seen it work out before. So Arkansas's definitely got a puncher's chance against Gonzaga.
Well, so the issue with Gonzaga, I think, too, in that conference is you go through months now of playing subpar competition, and you hit that lull where all of a sudden you've got to amp it up to 10 going into the NCAA tournament, and you haven't faced a team like you're going to face in the round of 32 since December, January. And, that takes a little bit to get back into the swing of things. That's why I see Memphis as maybe a stumbling block for them, just because Memphis is going to have played a little bit higher tier competition. Memphis has raw talent. They're not devoid of talent. Again, the coaching doesn't seem to be great. I don't like the offensive scheme at all. They seem to be really heavy on the ISO, and, they seem to run a pro-style offense, which would make sense given Penny Hardaway, but still, I mean, there's something about Memphis.
Anthony had his meltdown press conference this year and was just
sure did.
That was embarrassing.
That was not a good look. So, in Arkansas, there's a lot to love there too. I mean, look at what Musselman did at Nevada, right? And he's picked up right where he left off at Arkansas. In Arkansas, another basketball program with some history. They're playing great this year. The SEC as a whole was really good this year compared to where they had been. I don't know. Gonzaga, when you look at those games lining up, Gonzaga's going to have to get through Memphis, which should be easy, but there's always that chance to stumble. But then you got two really hard games in Arkansas and Texas Tech. I probably like Arkansas the best at all the 4 seeds, and Texas Tech maybe the best at all the 3 seeds. Take that back. Tennessee's a 3 seed. I keep thinking they're a 2 seed, but Arkansas and Tennessee both on the same level for me.
I think everybody's just praying and hoping that Gonzaga Duke is the Elite Eight matchup, and I think there's a good chance neither team is there.
Could be. I got serious doubts about Duke after that championship game. I didn't see heart I didn't see fight like I'm used to seeing out of
They've
Duke
looked
teams.
bad down the stretch. I mean, Coach K, I don't know what his deal is this year, but he just looks miserable.
He
Like
does.
he looks extra miserable this year.
Yeah.
He always looks kind of miserable. He looks like he hates life this year.
Yeah.
I don't know what his deal is. And I mean, like, I thought the whole UNC and addressing the crowd at the end and him like basically yelling at the student section, I thought it was like a bad look, to be honest. I was like, okay, that's how I'm going to remember Coach K's last game, for him like telling everybody to essentially shut up, listen to me. I know what's best. We're going to go win the ACC tournament until Virginia Tech whoops us. And then we're going to go lose in the second or third round of the NCAA tournament. And mine last season is going to be very forgettable.
Come on, y'all, quit cussing.
Let's
before we move on, I just want to
South.
say, do you remember the shot of Coach K before the game when he kissed his wife and went into the locker room?
Yeah, I saw
they
that.
showed it. That is when I had the same exact thought as you, where it looked like he was absolutely having the worst time of his life.
Yeah,
heading into that locker room.
It looks like he stayed a year too long.
Yeah.
That's what
who knows? We could be completely wrong, but that's the vibe. That's the vibe.
I'm not wrong usually. So let's jump over to the South, and we'll do the East region last.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. This is an interesting region as well. Also pretty chalky for me now that I look at it. Actually, it might be all chalk, except for the 9 seed. I've got TCU beat Seton Hall. I think the games I'm most interested in, I think Chattanooga, Illinois is an interesting matchup.
It is.
Chattanooga is very good. They're a very good free throw shooting team. Illinois seems to be going through this little like woe is me kind of situation right now. They underperformed in the tournament last year. I don't love Houston against UAB. I mean, I'm going to pick Houston, but right. I don't love Houston as a team. They got to the Final Four last year, but they basically beat, double-digit seeds all the way there. They just got a really good run to the Final Four, if you recall, before getting smoked by Gonzaga. But the issue for me is I don't love Illinois. I don't love Houston. So you kind of got to put one of them in the Sweet 16. I mean, you could put a team like UAB or Chattanooga, but more likely than not, depends on what your bracket strategy is, right? Are you going to go in? Are you trying to win your bracket? If you're trying to win your bracket, you should probably put in Houston or Illinois, because you putting in a 13 or a 12 is very unlikely to get all the way to the Sweet 16. But it gets interesting. I think Colorado State's pretty good. I expect them to beat Michigan. That sets up an interesting Tennessee-Colorado matchup. My whole issue with Tennessee, Tim, is Rick Barnes.
That's a really good issue to take with Tennessee.
That's my biggest issue.
If you're going to pick one, that's the low-hanging fruit.
I think Tennessee is a really good basketball team. They play really good defense. Offensively, they have their ups and downs, but they're really good defensively. And I think defense typically favors teams in this tournament. But it's Rick Barnes. And then I've got them meeting Villanova and Jay Wright. And I just think Jay Wright is a far superior coach. So I just went with the coaching matchup there. And then I end up picking Villanova over Arizona because you've got a veteran team against a pretty young Arizona team. Villanova is, again, well coached. They've got Colin Gillespie, who is a baller. They're a really good free throw shooting team. I think tops in the nation. And I think they're set up for a pretty good run here. So I'm going to go Villanova out of the South region.
No, I mean, look, I like it. You can't go wrong with Villanova, especially since they kind of got the monkey off their back and beat UNC in the national championship.
National championships.
Yeah, that's true. The thing with Villanova, is Villanova seems to go really deep or not deep at all. And there seems to be no happy medium with them. I like them a lot this year. I got them all the way in the Elite Eight with Tennessee, and I have Tennessee advancing. I mentioned I like Tennessee a lot. They're extremely balanced. I've got the 12
you got
over
them
the
in the
5.
Sweet 16.
Yeah, I've got Tennessee beating Michigan in the Sweet 16.
Got it.
And then advancing to play Arizona in the Elite Eight. And
So you
going
got
on
Tennessee
through.
being Michigan in the second round.
That's right.
Tennessee,
The round of 32.
Tennessee over Villanova in the Sweet 16. Okay.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
And then I struggle with Chattanooga. I think Chattanooga is a pick that a lot of people are going to fall in love with, just because they do have really nice size. They've got some good players, but I'm just not seeing them beating Kofi Cockburn. I think he's one of the best players in the NCAA. Guy averaging 21 points, absolute monster, averaging 10 boards. They got some good shooters on the perimeter. They are kind of in a malaise right now, though. I don't know what's going on with the Illini, but
right.
I can't see Chattanooga beating a team like Illinois with that kind of star power. So
they could.
That they
I'm
could.
not gonna pick it, though.
I'm not picking it either. And I think that's going to be one that a lot of people do pick, because it seems like every year the analysts kind of latch on to a 13 seed and they're like, oh, this is going to be the one that, hey, be on upset alert. I don't know that too many of them are pointing to this Chattanooga team. And I think we're forgetting how good Illinois is when they're really clicking. So other than that, it's fairly chalk, at least the top two games. But when you get down to UAB Houston, I've got UAB over Houston. UAB is just insanely balanced with a lot of experience. And I haven't loved what I've seen from Houston this year. So I'm going to go, typically there's always a 5/12 upset. And I don't like picking them because I feel like it can go a little overboard. Because obviously I mentioned earlier, I have New Mexico State over UConn, also a 5/12, but I feel pretty confident in UAB here.
It's all about your bracket strategy. You don't want to look and have 3-12 speeding.
No,
moving on to the next round.
Right. Because the odds are not in your favor.
Right. Choose one. If you miss out on another one, oh well.
Yeah. So I may revisit the UConn because Arkansas State for me is advancing in the next round, regardless of who they're playing. Doesn't matter if it's UConn or New Mexico State. So really kind of inconsequential whether I get that one wrong or not. When you really run into troubles when you have, like I do, a UAB team beating Illinois and potentially getting into the Sweet 16 is the way I have it now. I have them, going through to face Arizona. I don't know if that's going to stick or not, but I really like UAB this year. I really do. A lot of depth.
Who do you have coming out of that region?
I have Tennessee advancing to the Final Four.
Okay. All right, let's go down to the Midwest.
But, I want to visit one other game because this is another game I think we're building up into something it's not. Who do you have, Loyola or Ohio State?
So, I initially had Loyola, but then I was like,
we're falling into the trap, man.
Don't fall into the trap. This is not 2018 Loyola. This wasn't last year.
No.
Loyola. Last year, Loyola was really good.
Yep.
I don't think they're the same caliber team. No. And I think Ohio State is better than people give them credit for. So, Ohio State has that Ohio State Villanova game is a really interesting second round game if it happens.
Right.
But and the Big Ten typically plays well in this tournament. So you got to watch out for Big Ten teams. But I'm going to go Ohio State.
It struggled last year because I think the Big Ten underperformed last year, and it was kind of a blip, but it just kind of threw me off because I started to look at my bracket as a whole. And I don't know if you do this where you start realizing you've got a heavy concentration of like one or two conferences winning their games.
Oh, yeah. In the next region, I switched an opponent because I didn't want two Big Ten teams playing in the Elite Eight.
Exactly. And this is basically my Big Ten bracket here. But I really do. I think the Big Ten is the best conference in basketball. And it's hard not to let that bias creep in. But in this case, with that Loyola Chicago game, I had it Loyola at first, switch it to Ohio State. And I think that's a trap game that a lot of people are going to make that call on Loyola. It's a different team. It's not the same bunch of ramblers. I hope Sister Jean is doing wheelies at the Final Four as much as anybody, but I just don't see it happening this year.
Sister Jean, born in 1919.
God bless that woman.
God bless her. Midwest region. So Kansas is the number 1 seed. You got Auburn as the 2. Auburn really turned me off with their performance against Texas A&M. I thought they looked horrible.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you're not ready to go this time of year. So that to me set off a red flag. I've got a couple of bigger upsets in this first round. I've got Iowa State over LSU. I think with Will Wade
your coach having to hit the streets before the tournament
being dismissed. I don't think that's a good thing. Iowa State has really burned me the last few years over in this bracket. I had them in the Final Four one year, and they lost to a 14 seed. And I've never forgiven them. So they owe me. So they need to pull off this LSU win. I've got Miami over USC. I don't know. Honestly, I don't think I'll watch a single Pac-10 game or Pac-12 game this entire year. I don't know much about the Pac-12, but I think Miami's been playing fairly well down the stretch. So I'm going to go ACC there, lean on that 10 over 7. And then my big upset is South Dakota State. If you're looking for a 13 seed to pick, I think it's that one. Providence. I watched a couple of their games. I mean, what do they do? Well,
they don't wow you, that's for sure. They junk up a basketball game real good.
They're a tough team to watch.
Yes,
I don't know how they're a 4 seed, but I'm not really a fan of Providence. I mean, they've had a good season. Don't get me wrong, but they don't look like a 4 seed when you watch them. Either way, I've got Iowa advancing, and Iowa was the team I decided to knock down a peg once I had them in Wisconsin meeting in the Elite Eight. I think Wisconsin's really good. They had an earlier exit in the Big Ten tournament, but they play pretty good defense. They're really good at holding onto the basketball. And I think they're a team that can make a run. I don't like putting Kansas in the Final Four because Kansas always seems to underperform in this tournament, or at least they underperform way more than they should. So I've got Wisconsin over Kansas, Wisconsin going to the Final Four.
Yeah, I don't hate it at all. Sorry, I heard a weird sound I don't recognize down here. I don't know what it is, but we'll keep podding through it. If it's some sort of situation, I'll know in a little bit. But I agree with a lot of what you said. Providence is interesting and not a team that I liked. And I have seen a few Providence games this year. Ed Cooley, I think, is a great coach. So it's not a knock on the coach. His teams play hard, but I do have South Dakota State winning that game. South Dakota State's been hot this year, man. Absurdly so. I think, are they above 30 wins? They may be.
Let's see. South Dakota State is 30-4.
That's right. So they've had a really good season. They've got some shooters.
121 straight.
Yeah, exactly. So hot, very hot. And you're talking about a team that I'm not impressed with. And I think South Dakota State could have had an argument for a 12 seed. So I'm going to go with that, what is basically a 5v12 matchup to me, because I think Providence is overseeded and South Dakota State's underseeded. So give me South Dakota State in that one. I have Iowa over Richmond.
Great mascot too, Jackrabbits. I mean,
oh yeah. I mean, how can you beat the Jackrabbits?
Yeah, you can't.
But I've got that. And I got to tell you, I'm really high on Iowa this year. Not only because I think their yellow jerseys are some of the best jerseys in college basketball right now, but they're a really high scoring team. They're top 5 in scoring. They share the ball well. The issue with Iowa, and I think the reason why Fran McCaffrey's team gets kind of shaded a bit, is they don't play super great defense. And usually that would concern me more. But when you are number 5 in scoring on a points per game basis around the mid 80s, that tells me that you're more worried about pushing tempo. And I like teams that like to go fast. I like teams that like to shoot. Iowa checks all the boxes. So for me, I've got Iowa going all the way to the Final Four out of this bracket.
That seems to be like a very popular pick right now, which also turned me off to Iowa.
Ooh, that makes me feel better about it then.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, like you said, like my thing with Iowa, that I was like, okay, if I'm going to take Iowa or Wisconsin down, I really like Wisconsin. Iowa rarely, I don't think they've been past the Sweet 16 with their current head coach.
Two mirror image basketball teams right now.
They're fairly close. I think Wisconsin plays better.
Wisconsin's defense, right? Well, what I mean by mirror image is Iowa's offense, no defense. Wisconsin is heavy defense, decent offense. But I mean, their calling card is going to be the effort on the defensive side of the ball. So two Big Ten teams, but two very different Big Ten teams that both, I mean, honest to goodness, I like both coming out of this bracket. It was a hard decision for me. The only reason I don't have Wisconsin playing Iowa to get into the Final Four is because I got spooked having two Big Ten teams playing each other.
So we basically are the same person because that's what I did.
Oh, good.
It shows different teams. All right, so let's jump over to the East. And the East, I think, is definitely the region you want to be in.
Yes.
To me, it's the weakest one seed. You've got a banged up Baylor team, even though they're the defending national champions. It's blue blood heavy. You got UCLA, you got North Carolina, you got Kentucky. But I think if there's going to be a region with a little bit of chaos, it's going to be this one. So, I've got Baylor, UNC. It was a toss-up for me with North Carolina and Marquette. And I do have Baylor advancing to the Sweet 16 there. I've been back and forth on Indiana and St. Mary's. Indiana's been pretty hot. But I'm going to go St. Mary's. I think they're just built a little bit differently this year. They're a pretty solid team.
Same.
And I've got UCLA advancing as well. I've got Virginia Tech moving on past Texas. I think the thing with Texas is Texas doesn't look the part this year. No. They do play really good defense, so that's always a concern.
Chris Beard's a great coach.
He's a really good coach. He's obviously been to a Final Four with Texas Tech. But I think when you're basically playing Texas is going to be a little bit like playing UVA because they play really good defense. They have a really hard time scoring. And I think what we've seen out of Virginia Tech recently is that shouldn't be of major concern. And then I've got Purdue over Yale. Hopefully Yale pulls that upset, but I'm not going to call it. I really like Murray State a lot.
Yes.
I think they're a really well-rounded basketball team. They haven't been tested much. I think they've only got one game against the top 25. But 18-0 in conference play. Their head coach says that it's a better team than when John Morant was on the team and they went to the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8 that year.
Yeah.
They hold their opponents to 62 points. So I like them over San Francisco, and that sets up a really fun matchup there in the second round with Kentucky. And, in my fun bracket, I don't typically do different variants of my bracket. I typically have the same bracket. This year I'm messing around with it a little bit. I really want to pick Murray State over Kentucky for a couple of reasons. One, I think Murray State will want that game so much more than Kentucky wants it. Because you've got a bunch of guys that play at Murray State, weren't recruited by Kentucky. You got a bunch of one and done guys at Kentucky that, may not care as much, whether you think that or not. But I'm trying to win money bracket. I'm going to move Kentucky past Murray State. And then I've got Virginia Tech beating Purdue. Purdue, they've obviously got some size. I think it seems like a toss-up based off of who you listen to and kind of any expert out there. So you should feel comfortable that Virginia Tech is fully capable of beating Purdue if you want to put Virginia Tech in the Sweet 16. And then I've got UCLA advancing to the Sweet 16 and actually advancing past Baylor. And again, this is my money bracket. History tells you to go with the higher seed over the 11. I'm going to pick Kentucky to go to the Elite 8, and then I've got Kentucky going to the Final Four.
Yep. So we got the same team getting to the Final Four, although with Kentucky, I just struggle. I picked them because I think they're the best team in the bracket, obviously. But you worry with the nature of the one and dones in college basketball, and come tournament time, we've seen sometimes
Perry doesn't win a whole lot of natties.
No, and experience and team unity and guys that have played together for years tend to fare pretty well in March, and play a little better than the sum of all their parts, where the opposite is true of some of these more star powered teams that put up performances in March where you're like, really? That's it? I hope we don't run into that scenario. Because like you said, Calipari doesn't just, rake natties away. I think there was a fear around 2010 that was going to happen as well as he was recruiting. I mean, it seemed like he was recruiting at a level that was just untouchable and still is largely, but he doesn't have the success you would expect given his recruiting rankings. I think a lot of that has to do with the turnover. But LJ Cryer, who's out for Baylor, guard, I think he's averaging about 14 points a game, 15 points a game, shoots the three ball very well. A key cog for them is going to be missing in March. And when that happens right at the precipice, it's hard for me to feel super confident about Baylor. So what I do think North Carolina does, especially on the perimeter, I think they play good defense. Leaky Black especially is one of those lockdown guys that I think is just incredible on defense. Armando Bacot gives anyone problems on the interior. While I don't think UNC is a world-beating team, there's something about the Baylor matchup with that injury that just tells me, hey, you're taking out one of their better scorers on the perimeter, certainly one of their better shooters. Pick North Carolina in that game. So I did 8-1 in the second round there because I have them getting past Marquette. But everything else that you listed, it pretty much lines up. I've got UCLA and Kentucky in that game to go to the Final Four with Kentucky going by. But that was a tough one. I really wanted to pick UCLA. But just thought better of it because when I have watched Kentucky this year, they've looked really good.
Yeah, Kentucky's an interesting team. They're 3-6 against the top 25.
Mm-hmm.
Their BPI rank is 3. So again, it's just a weird.
Isn't that odd?
BPI statistic. It's like, how are we getting to that number? And then, Virginia Tech is 19. So, honestly, like taking the homerness out of it, Virginia Tech's in a very good region. I think there is a great opportunity for chaos in this region. And when that happens, that's the region you want to be in. You want to be one of the teams creating chaos, obviously.
Yeah.
But they've got 2 winnable games if they can get past Texas, obviously, and assuming Purdue beats Yale. But, Kentucky over Murray State is not a lock. There is no lock game once you get past the first round in this region. North Carolina.
I had a harder time picking I had a harder time picking Murray State, Kentucky than I did Purdue, Kentucky. That's how weird my brain was about Murray State. And I don't know if it's because of the lingering Ja Morant images I have in my head, but it's not just Ja Morant. Murray State's been good for about 15 years, really. Kenneth Faried back in 2008, 2009 timeframe, a guy who went on to play in the pros, absolutely outstanding power forward, was kind of when I started to notice Murray State was playing really good ball. And it seems like they've just been fairly consistently putting out good teams. They've got a good culture. And, it could be coach speak, but I heard the same quote you did from the Murray State coach, feeling better about this team than he did with the team that Ja Morant was on. And that team outside of Ja Morant was pretty good. It wasn't just Ja Morant and 4 other dudes. Right. Murray State plays good basketball, and that was a tough pick for me, man. I'm still looking at it right now, my bracket, saying, man, I could probably pick Murray State. I'm not going to do it.
Do you have Purdue beating Virginia Tech in your bracket?
I do. Yeah, I think the matchup on the interior is just going to be a little too difficult for us. When you talk about one of their leading scorers being 7'4", and being dominant down low, it's just that might be too far in the mismatch for us in regards to Keve Aluma. Keve would have a little trouble with the baby hook with someone at 7'4", and that seems to be his go-to post move. Not only that, on the defensive side, how do you really contain someone that's 7'4"? That even if you had somebody, and we got Wessler coming in next year who's 7 foot plus.
You put in Ojiako and you just try and get him to draw fouls constantly.
Yeah, that's really what you got to do. The problem with Purdue is they got great scorers elsewhere and they can shoot.
Right.
So, and it's not just the 7'4", player, it's the 6'10" player they've got behind him who's also one of the leading scorers that would present problems for us as well. And Matt Painter, Purdue's been good lately. Past 5 years, they've just been tremendous. So hard to bet against.
So who, to recap, your Final Four is
as it stands today is Gonzaga versus Iowa. And
Gonzaga cannot play Iowa.
I'm sorry. I'm reading ahead.
National
wrong.
championship.
Yes. I'm reading my national championship. So I got Gonzaga over Kentucky and Tennessee losing to Iowa.
Okay. Yeah, I've got right now, see, I don't have a 1 seed in here. And I think there's always been a 1 seed in the Final Four. So that's just telling me I've messed up. So I need a 1 seed in here.
Yeah,
so
you got to play the odds.
I'm going to pivot. I'm going to put Gonzaga in over Texas Tech because that's the game I kept going back and forth on.
It's a good pick.
But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put Kentucky. Oh, man. No, I'm not. I'm going to put Gonzaga in the national championship game.
Okay.
Because that's who I had originally.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got Villanova and Wisconsin playing in the other game. And I think I'm going to go Villanova.
You know, I really want to put Villanova in.
I just don't like how my Final Four looks. You know?
You said a name that sent chills down my spine for the way my bracket is laid out.
Yeah. I feel like nobody's talking about Villanova.
Rick Barnes is poison in March.
He is.
I mean, he proved it with Texas time and time again.
You don't want to be within 5 feet of Rick Barnes in March.
And I've got Tennessee all the way to the Final Four. And that may have to be swapped for Villanova because Villanova was who I was struggling with as far as who to put through to the Final Four. Tennessee, man, Rick Barnes, just woof. I like the team. I don't like the coach.
I think I'm going to go Villanova to win it all. And I'm going to stay with that pick. I think Villanova is kind of flying under the radar right now, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Nobody's really talking about them. They won their conference tournament. They've had probably one of the more challenging schedules in college basketball. I think they're definitely more battle tested than Gonzaga.
Right.
And I mean, I think obviously it's kind of a difficult, it's not a super easy path for them. Like that Ohio State game is going to be tough. The Tennessee game is going to be tough if that happens. Arizona is obviously a very good team. So, I mean, nobody has an easy path this time of year, but I think just when I look at Villanova and Gonzaga's never won a national championship.
That's right.
I don't think they're better than they were last year.
That's fair.
And I think Villanova, with Gillespie, who was hurt last year, I believe, it'll give them an added dimension in March in this tournament. And they're just a tough team to beat because they're so disciplined. They're such a good shooting team and they hit all their free throws. And that's a tough mix this time of year to overcome.
Right. And I mean, obviously having Colin Gillespie back is huge, being their leading scorer, and his absence was a big deal. He's just one of those guys. He runs the offense so well. Big time assist guy. And, in a guard heavy offense like they run in Villanova, it's just key have those guys. That's just, that's always kind of what trips me up about Villanova is the small ball that's played. It gives me trepidation, but you look back at who the coach is. I mean, Jay Wright makes you feel a lot better than Rick Barnes does. So I went ahead, at least for now, and swapped Tennessee out and put in Villanova just because I talked myself out of Tennessee. That could change because I like Arizona and I need to go do more research on Arizona because I don't follow Pac-12 teams as well as I should. And I just want to make sure I'm not making a mistake by, having Villanova in over them. But I don't know.
I'm going to do the same because I initially had Arizona in here.
That's where I started, and I felt like it was too chalk. And I feel weird going chalk with teams I don't know a whole lot about. So I need to go look more at Arizona before I make that final decision. Villanova does make me feel good. The one thing about Villanova and a potential issue with Villanova as I pull back over here to my bracket instead of looking at your face. Let's see. Yeah. So right now, my struggle with Illinois or with Villanova is that I have them beating Illinois to get to the Final Four. I think Illinois presents a really rough matchup with Kofi Cockburn to Villanova.
Villanova won't play Illinois. Right. So so you'll have Illinois beating Arizona.
I have Illinois beating Arizona right now, only because I wanted to make it less chalk and I didn't know enough about Arizona. Whereas I know a decent amount about Illinois and I really like Illinois. This is where I get back to the prior conversation we had where I was like,
flip Chattanooga in as the
I have. I mean, look, if my picking history is any indicator, go heavy on the mocks right now. Go heavy on the
Illinois
mocks.
Screwed me last year because I had them in the championship game. And what did they lost in the second round, I think?
Second round, yeah. Second round now.
So I was done. I was so pissed at them. Yep. So pissed.
Well, see, the thing is, Illinois looked like a sure deal last year. They looked like less of a sure deal. Yeah, they were a lock in my mind to go deep into the tourney, and they did not show up.
No, they didn't.
So I'm hoping for a different scenario here, but right now, with the way my bracket is laid out, if Villanova meets Illinois, I just don't think Illinois is a good matchup for Villanova. But again, if I go through right now and take a look at Arizona, I'll see how they match up with Illinois. If I like the matchup versus Illinois with Arizona, I'll put them through to the Final Four.
Okay. So it's all subject to change. I'll probably change a few of these, but fun exercise either way. And again, it's all about your strategy, right? Like my recommendation would be to you, if you're feeling great about an 11 seed, it's probably not best to put them in the Final Four because it just doesn't happen very often. It's only happened 6 times in the entire history of the tournament. So root for that team.
That's right.
If you're trying to win the bracket, typically you want to go chalk as much as possible, especially in the later rounds. Yes. If you don't want to have, an Illinois, no, I'm just kidding. You don't want to have, a UAB in the Elite Eight, so that's just where you have to be careful, no matter how confident you feel about a team. Now, if you're just goofing around, I've got a goof around bracket. Obviously, Virginia Tech is winning the national championship of that one, which has never been done by an 11 seed, but, we'll see what happens. So
I will say if Virginia Tech gets past Purdue, if we're able to somehow get past Purdue,
Virginia Tech, Kentucky, woo!
I would.
Or Murray State.
Sky's the limit if you can get past Purdue. It's just.
If they get past Purdue or Yale, because I don't want to
discredit the Bulldogs. Don't count out the Bulldogs yet.
Okay. And then they have to play the Racers of Murray State.
Very popular podcast in Ivy League country. So my apologies to all of our people in Connecticut listening to this episode.
I thought, is Yale Connecticut?
Yeah, I think so.
I thought it was New York. Whatever. It's up there.
I think Northeast. It's Cornell in New York. Cornell and Columbia.
Cornell and Columbia is, yeah. All right, so that is our show. We will put the link to our Chowder and Grits bracket in the speaker notes. So if you haven't joined that, first off, not sure what you're waiting on, but go ahead and do that. But yeah, Tim, any final words before we jump off for the first time? And I think our last show was in December.
Yeah. No, I mean, no real words other than, hey, guys, baseball is back. NFL free agency, baseball free agency happening at the same Crazy time week. Is kind of cool because it's been news after news. Where will Deshaun Watson go? Nobody knows. I hope it's not the Carolina Panthers. And I will say, sporting wise, all that news is great. Happy to have baseball back. College baseball has been a lot of fun, but this tournament right here is the greatest sporting event on planet Earth. So enjoy, especially the first 4 days of this tournament.
It is
enjoy it.
So good.
Because as soon as it's over and you don't have multiple games going on at the same time, there's a little piece of you inside that dies. So just hang on to the light and enjoy the games. Like I said, take off work if you can.
Embrace the madness.
Embrace it.
If you've got that team that just chokes it away, well, guess what? I bet a bunch of other people have that same issue going on. So it is what it is.
Don't let the bracket ruin anything. I mean, who cares?
No, yeah, it is what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think there has, I didn't realize how chalk heavy I was in the upper brackets here. but I think there's a big opportunity for some major upsets this year. So I think as
Yeah, I agree.
we continue to watch basketball, college basketball morph over the years, it seems like there's just more and more parity and less of those power teams and those power schools. There's more talent spread out. So it makes this tournament much more interesting and much more difficult to predict, which would always have those two traits.
That's interesting. And I don't know, obviously I'm not going to pontificate on it here, but I think there is more parity than we used to see. And I don't know if that is due to an increase in one and dones that are in college basketball and that level of turnover, but you don't have those dynasty teams that you would see. And those are typically the teams, the guys with multi-years of JJ Redick and,
Right.
the Maryland national championship team with Juan Dixon. And, they had a bunch of huge players on that team that have been there for a while.
Duke's not Duke anymore. Kentucky's not Kentucky. It's just rental players that put on the jersey for a year and they're gone.
And I think that's what's led to this parity is you don't have guys hoarding these high level recruits that have been there for 3 to 4 years. It just seems like guys are jumping to the league at a faster clip, and maybe I don't understand the inner workings of that. That's just how I see it. But I do think what we've seen is this has led to parity where these teams, take Virginia, for example. I mean, how much success have they had? Don't hate me too much for speaking about the Cavaliers' success, but how much success have they had by having a strong system that's recruited to by good players, not necessarily all 5-star guys, but good players, 4 stars, maybe a 5-star sprinkled in once in a while. But they've competed with the highest of the highs as far as rankings go and recruiting and have come out on top. And that's what I love about this tournament.
They had guys like Kyle Guy. They had DeAndre Hunter.
Oh yeah.
And then the other guy. They're the third guy to their big three. But those guys had played together for a long time. And so it's just that's why veteran teams can be very dangerous in this tournament. So
especially
guys
with
that
the
have played
upsets,
together,
man.
they've got good chemistry, you got some momentum. That to me, that's why I moved Arizona out of my Final Four, because they're such a young team. And I think when you play a veteran team or a veteran team like a Villanova, if they match up, I think it gives Villanova a big advantage, because Villanova has had more success over the last few years because they don't go after the NBA guys.
No,
now they'll get NBA guys,
of course,
but they'll be there for 2, 3, maybe 4 years.
Yeah. I mean, you pretty clearly know who's going to be a one and done nowadays when you're recruiting them, and it seems like certain schools, UNC to a lesser degree than Duke, but Duke's one of them. Kentucky, obviously, every year. Arizona, a big one. These guys are going to be one and done when they come in. And, the beauty of the tournament is that you have some of these unheralded teams and unheralded players that have played together for a long time, and they knock off these guys. And that parity, we lose that in a lot of sports, specifically college football. We've lost a great deal of parity in that sport. So enjoy the parity while it's here. And that to me is the beauty of this tournament, is it is a smorgasbord of parity. It's more parity than your eyeballs can handle. And it's everything that's good about college athletics, at least when you look at it in a vacuum, game to game. Maybe not the sponsorships and the all the noise in the background, but enjoy it, because we don't get parity in college sports much anymore when it comes to football and basketball, or at least when it comes to football, I should say.
Yeah, definitely football. Well, that's our show for today. Thanks for listening. If you've not been with us before, be sure to hit that subscribe button. If you have and you haven't left us a review, we'd really appreciate a big ol' 5 stars, maybe a little comment. You guys are great. Yeah, sometimes we need that boost. Get us through the day,
Pay us compliments.
Yeah, Tim really needs some.
I need something.
Some sweet comments.
It's been a rough month and a half over here.
He gets down on himself sometimes.
That's right.
He'll hit me up. He's like, I don't know if I liked that take I had. I'm gonna beat myself up until I can just get another shot at it. Thanks for listening, man. And enjoy the madness. And of course, go Hokies.
Go Hokies, ACC champs, baby.